Good evening, and welcome to Sherborn's PreTown meeting. I think most of you know me, Mary Wolf. I'm the town moderator, and my purpose in conducting this meeting is to allow people to ask some questions, make some presentations, all with the goal of making Saturday's actual town meeting run as smoothly and as efficiently and as quickly as possible, as we are still within the pandemic. And that was why I initiated a pre-town meeting last year. And I'm continuing it this year for the same reason, so that we can sort of get in and get out as fast as possible on Saturday, while still allowing everyone to have their positions aired and understood. So a couple of things up front. Presenters, I will be going through the warrant article by article. For many of the articles, I will simply read the title of the articles for those articles that I think that will, people won't have much to say about. That doesn't mean that if you do have something to say, you shouldn't speak up. So please raise your hand if you do come across an article that you want to speak to. Proponents of some of the articles are going to make 5-minute presentations and some people who are opposed to the articles will be making statements against. Again, it would be one 5-minute proposal for and one 5-minute against. Then we'll use the same rules as we use at town meeting, which is 2 minutes per commenter. I would ask you to be very sparing in what you have to say, in the sense that please limit your comment to the 2 minutes. And please do not simply repeat what the person ahead of you said.
Participants,
try to
share screen, record, reaction.
Can somebody mute Bob? Thank you. So what was I saying? Keep your comments, please, to 2 minutes. If you start to run over, I will warn you that you're running over, and if you keep up, then we'll have to mute you, so that everybody gets a chance to take part in tonight's festivities. So with no further ado, Article 1, Annual Reports. This is a majority vote. Are there any comments on Article 1? Okay, hearing none. Article 2, Supplemental Appropriations for fiscal year 2021. They amount in total to $326,096.10. They will come from free cash, and the specific amounts are snow and ice, $113,834.60, police overtime, $87,261.50, and ambulance, $100,000, and farm pond, $25,000. Are there any comments on that? Okay, hearing none. OPEB Trust Fund, Article 3, majority.
Mary,
Yes.
can I just ask a question, a general question, as opposed to a question on any particular warrant article?
Sure.
Anything and everything that gets voted upon at annual town meeting, do any of them go onto the ballot, which the town will then vote on, or does everything that gets voted on at annual town meeting get resolved and completed and finished up at town meeting, and no further action other than what the vote was at town meeting happened?
Okay, so articles, there are articles that need both. Most articles will be dispensed with at town meeting. The borrowings will have to go on the ballot. So capital program will be on the ballot. So they have to clarify a little bit further, capital articles have to pass by 2/3, well, borrowing articles, sorry, not capital, but borrowing articles need to pass by 2/3 at town meeting, and then they need to pass by a majority on the ballot.
So that would be any capital items as well as any warrant articles where ultimate borrowing are required.
Yes, well, ultimate borrowing that is voted by town meeting.
Right.
The vote to borrow will be held at town meeting. It's not something that we might vote to borrow on a year from now. It's
okay. The second clarifying question is there is that capital items warrant, and maybe it's better when you talk about it when we get to it, but there's a number of items bundled underneath that. Is that one large vote, or is that multiple individual votes?
Right. So my plan for Saturday is to treat that as a consent agenda where I will read the line items, the titles of the line items, and if there is no hold, and people will have the opportunity to call a hold on an individual item. Any items that are not held will be voted without discussion as a single vote. If someone calls a hold on an article, then I will pull that out. We'll then vote all the articles, all the line items, sorry, that were not held. And then we'll go back and treat any individual line item separately.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Really appreciate that.
Okay. Jackie, you had a question?
I did. I just had a comment. I just wanted to clarify that the ballot is sample ballots now on the town clerk's page of the website. And if anybody has any questions about which ballot questions are going to be on the ballot, they can go to the town website and go to the town clerk page and see what they are.
Excellent.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Jackie.
Thank
And I would ask everybody to, if you ask a question and I recognize you and you get an answer, as soon as I recognize you, if you would put your hand down, because otherwise I have no way of knowing.
Recording. Mary, you're muted.
Sorry. I'm not sure how that happened. Everybody heard me speak to Frank, though, correctly? Is that correct? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So moving on to Article 3, the OPEB Trust Fund. The motion will be, I move that $100,000 from free cash in the Treasury be transferred to the OPEB Liability Trust Fund. Are there any questions or comments on Article 3? Okay. Article 4, bond premiums. The motion's a little bit lengthy. What this allows to happen is that premiums that we get on bonds may be applied to the payment of the costs of the bonds. And although current borrowings have that right in the language, until the Municipal Modernization Act was passed, that was not the case. And so we have this while we still have some of those bonds open. So does anybody have any comments on that? Okay. Article 5, improvement and embellishment of cemeteries. I move that $10,000 be transferred from the Cemetery Enlargement Fund to be used for the improvement and embellishment of cemeteries around the town and for the care, preservation, or establishment of any lot or its appurtenances therein. This is the cemetery article that we have each year. Any comments there? Okay. Revolving funds, majority. We every year vote limits on what various groups can spend from their revolving funds. And the limits this year are Council on Aging, $75,000, Board of Health Immunization, $20,000, Recycling Committee sale of bins, $1,065, Town Forest sale of firewood, $35,000, Farm Pond, $160,000, ambulance, $375,000, elder housing, $351,109, recreation, $250,000, and DPW fire and police surplus equipment, $50,000. Are there any comments, questions on that? Okay, and Article 7, stabilization funds, majority. I move that $374,185 from free cash in the treasury be transferred to the general stabilization fund. Are there any comments on that? I see Frank Jenkins with his hand up. Someone can unmute Frank.
Hello. Yes, I had my hand up for Article 6, the revolving funds.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Sure, Frank, go ahead.
These are funds, the revolving funds are funds which are raised through fees by the various committees that have them. Is that right?
That's correct. They are outside the budget.
Outside the budget. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, that is correct. Actually, Jeannie, if I could ask you, I'm trying to do like 4 things at once here. So if you see someone's hand up, if you could just speak up to me so that I don't miss people, that would be great.
I can do that.
Thanks very much. Okay, so Articles 1 through 7 on Saturday, those are going to be handled as a consent agenda, which I just actually talked about with Frank Hook on with respect to the capital article. But Articles 1 through 7, I'm hoping to address in the same way, where I will simply read the title of the article, and if someone wants to talk about it, they can call a hold on it. If they do not, and no one comments on any of the 7 articles, then we will vote them all with no discussion and 1 vote on Saturday. All right, Article 8, the omnibus budget. I do not have all of the figures there. Let me ask if anyone has a question about any of the figures there. I will have them obviously on Saturday, and I will read the totals for each department. If anyone has their report from the advisory committee tonight and they want to talk about a particular line item there, I'm happy to do that. If not, I think it would save everyone's time if we didn't do that this evening.
Richard Robinson has his hand up.
Okay, Richard?
Where are the details on the expenses for each of the departments? Where can they be found?
They are in the advisory report that was mailed to your house. There's line items for expenses and line items for salaries. Yeah,
no, I meant the line item for expenses obviously includes a bunch of different things. Where are those bunch of different things and how can I find them?
You could talk to the town finance director accountant. She would have those individual numbers.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? You want to put your hand down, Richard?
Trying.
Okay, good. Anyone else with a question on Article 8? Okay. Article 9, authorization for design and construction turf field at Laurel Farm. Because this is an article that I think people are quite interested in, I am going to read this particular motion, even though it is a little bit long. I move favorable action and that the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, be authorized to borrow up to $1 million for the purpose of design and construction of a new unlighted turf athletic field at Laurel Farm pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7(1), or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore, and in accordance with General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20, authorize any premium received by the town upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved for this vote, by this vote, less any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, to be applied to the payment of costs approved hereunder, thereby reducing by a like amount the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs, provided, however, that such borrowing shall be contingent upon both, one, at least $3 million first being raised through certain private donations for the said purpose, and two, approval by the voters of a Proposition 2.5 so-called debt exclusion question pursuant to General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21CK, and also to establish a stabilization fund under the Recreation Commission to be funded from the Recreation Revolving Fund for the purpose of repairing, resurfacing, or replacing the said field, provided, however, that field fees shall be first applied to debt service for said borrowing. We have presentations for and against, formal presentations for and against this article. So I'm going to ask for the formal presentation for the article first, and I think that's Dave Goldberg.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Okay. Let me share my screen with you. So can everyone see that? Which are you seeing, the presenter view or the regular view? Does it look good?
Yep, looks fine.
Okay, wonderful. All right, I'm Dave Goldberg. I'm the chair of the Recreation Commission. So I'm going to quickly, for those of you who sat through both the advisory presentation and the select board presentation, this will feel very similar. I think obviously I'm expecting a lot to come out in the discussions today, but let me walk through that presentation for those who didn't have the opportunity to hear it. Certainly I want to start out with why are we doing this? We started with the premise of trying to provide a better playing experience for youth sports. The fields, if you've been over to Laurel, relatively difficult to maintain without irrigation. There's a significant amount of time when the sports teams aren't allowed to play on it, either early in the season or because of rain. So we're trying to extend the playing season. And also give us an opportunity to allow the fields to rest, to continue to improve the availability and the playing service of the natural fields. A part of this is also to improve the parking experience over Laurel. I don't think there's any controversy there in terms of the difficulty in terms of parking over there, the dust obviously that gets kicked up, and just the haphazard nature and the potential safety hazard. And one of our guiding objectives was to make sure that this was cost neutral to the town and the taxpayers, and not have to pass on the cost of this to our youth sports. And then lastly, our expectation is that through field leasing, which we do today, that's how recreation makes the majority of the revenue that we use to maintain the fields. But by having this field, we will have excess revenue that we can put into other projects, and I'll talk about that in a second. In terms of overview of the project, it's one contiguous synthetic field. Will be located as you drive in on the right-hand side, and it will provide the ability for pretty much any sport to be played on it. There will be a significant improvement in terms of ADA accessibility as well. And we know that there's challenges over at Laurel with regard to that. I mentioned we're going to improve the parking, but also add additional spaces. Today, there isn't enough parking for even the fields that we have today. So we want to make sure that it's deep and the parking spaces are marked. And then various other things like a maintenance shed for DPW to store equipment over there. and some grading of the natural fields, because we will end up with some topsoil that we can use to fix some of the fields as they some of the regular grass fields. Some deliberate omissions, things we are not including in this project. There's no lighting, as it says in the article itself. We're not putting any bathrooms or any concessions in, no irrigation or bleachers. So pretty much it's a like for like, field for field replacement. So nothing additional getting added except for the maintenance shed that I alluded to earlier. In terms of what it's going to look like, again, this is a concept, so it gives you a sense for where the fields will be. This is set up, or actually rendered, as two side-by-side soccer fields, but there's really nothing that that prevents the field from playing the other way and being used for baseball, rugby, what have you. So that's one contiguous field rather than two separate fields. And you can see the improvements to the parking there, along with a turnaround. The current status of the project, the good news is this project was initiated probably about a decade ago. So we're able to save a significant amount of time and cost utilizing the plans from that prior project. So things like surveys and soil samples and so forth. We contracted with a company called Castle Booz, which has helped us with the layout and estimated costs and revenue projections from the fields. And they're the ones who created the rendering that you saw. I think we all know that there's a vote coming up on Saturday with regard to this project. And as Mary read, the warrant article is really to move forward with the design, so the detailed design of the fields, which would include the specific location, the specific materials we're planning on using, things like drainage, any mitigation that we would need to do in terms of filtering the water and so forth. So the full designs are a pretty significant investment, both from a time perspective and a cost perspective. So that will come after the meeting. And then obviously we have to work with the various town committees to get approval, and then hopefully build the field at some point. We talked a little bit about the money to be borrowed. We estimate, including the turf field and the parking and the various improvements, it's about $4 million. We wanted to be responsible in terms of the money that we borrowed from the town. So we looked at the revenue first that we thought we could bring in from the fields, and then we backed into the amount of money that we were going to borrow. So we expect from the two fields to generate about $300,000. And this is backed by talking to other towns and looking at their cost per hour, as well as the number of hours that are available. And we looked at that and we said, okay, well, based off of the amount of revenue we're expected to come in and the fact that we know we have to put money aside to replace this field, we want to ensure that we have the money to pay back the debt. So we were looking for about 200% of the debt service to come in through revenue. And you can see approximate debt service is about $130,000 a year. And we have plenty of money that should be coming in. Should we have a shortfall, it would be taken out of the money we'd be used to replace the field in 10 years.
Okay, thank you, Dave. That's your 5 minutes. If you have,
okay.
Well, other things can be addressed.
Sure, yeah. So I went through all of this, but I'll stop there.
Okay, great. I think if people have questions, obviously you can answer them, and that'll be great. So we now have a representative from the Conservation Commission who is going to make a formal presentation in opposition to the article. Carol?
Hi there, I'm Carol McGarry. I'm a member of Conservation Commission. I have a statement. It's not a presentation, it's a statement that I'm going to read. Impacts to wetlands are a concern of and regulated by the Sherborn Conservation Commission. Laurel Farm is in the buffer zone of wetlands on the north and east sides of the fields, and there may be wetlands within the field itself. Wetlands have essential functions recognized and protected by state and local law, specifically including quality of water supplies, quality of groundwater, prevention of pollution, and wildlife habitat and wildlife. Wetlands act like sponges and play an invaluable role in storing surface water and runoff, filtering it and retaining it while it percolates and contributes to the groundwater supply. Here in Sherborn, our groundwater and aquifers are the source of the water we rely on in our daily lives, and the wetlands at Laurel Fields overlay an important aquifer. Wetlands maintain and improve water quality through trapping nutrients, sediments, and contaminants, but this capacity has limits. More research is needed on the impact of chemical dispersal from artificial turf on wetland health and functions. Many studies show that a wide range of hazardous materials make up artificial turf and its constituents, such as the infill, backing, and blades, even the newer designs. This includes PFAS, which is increasingly being flagged as a drinking water contaminant, even at very low levels, and is showing up in drinking water in Sherborn and nearby towns. There are also other toxic organic compounds and metals as part of hundreds of tons of synthetic polymers and other materials. Given its role to protect the above functions, the Commission is concerned about the introduction of hazardous materials that could contaminate wetlands and interconnected groundwater, as well as a nearby brook with broader connections. Because of the risk, a number of other nearby towns have decided against artificial fields or have delayed consideration in order to learn more about the health and environmental impacts of artificial turf. For Sherborn, questions will include: what specific materials are going to be included in the project? And how much and to what extent will the toxic materials move via water and air? What are the alternatives and what potential for contamination should be avoided? Therefore, the Commission recommends, at a minimum, further study of artificial turf, while also, more importantly, considering alternatives with lower environmental impacts, such as natural fields that are mostly or totally organically managed and have been implemented elsewhere. For these reasons, the Commission recommends voting against the installation of artificial turf at Laurel Farms.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
So now I'm going to open it up for comments, and comments will be 2 minutes each. And I'm going to ask, do I have someone there who can time for me so that I can keep track of the hands here? Jeannie, maybe, or
I can time if you want, Mary.
who is that? Heidi?
It's Cindy Ostrowski.
Oh,
Right.
Cindy.
Yeah.
I would like to have someone.
Mary, I can do it. I raised my hand.
Okay, Jackie, great. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm just going to go through the comments here in the order that people appear on my screen.
Tom
And-
Traynor's had his hand up for a while.
Pardon me?
Tom Traynor is probably first up.
Yeah. So Tom Traynor, you appear first on my screen. So 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. My name is Tom Traynor, and I've lived at 97 Washington Street for over 25 years. I currently enjoy volunteering on 3 town boards, and let me briefly bring you up to date on one of them, the Groundwater Protection Committee, in relationship to this article. At our Wednesday, May 5th meeting last week, a fact sheet on Article 9 was reviewed and approved by the committee. This fact sheet is 4 pages in length and can be found on the town's website. In the interest of time, let me just read the ending recommendations, and I quote, "The risks to Sherborn surface water and groundwater due to runoff of pollutants from the infill materials are significant and of course easier to prevent than to later remediate. Not covered here are additional environmental concerns, including reports of PFAS and microplastics pollution." The Groundwater Protection Committee makes the following 3 initial recommendations to town officials and residents to significantly reduce the risks and potential negative impacts on our irreplaceable Sherborn groundwater resources. Recommendation 1, invest instead in new natural grass fields at Laurel Farms and eliminate the proposed artificial turf fields. Number 2, if artificial turf fields are absolutely required and $4 million is available, consider relocating the project to an alternate site that is not in such close proximity to a major identified Sherborn aquifer, particularly not one that has been previously identified as the potential site of a future public water supply. If the project is to be built, this is recommendation number 3, ensure a natural or plant-based material be used for the infill.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Tom. I just want to, I'm getting some chats here from people that are saying various committees have reports they want to give, and that's fine, but there is one formal presentation, and Carol gave that using that time. And so everyone else, we're happy to hear your comments from your committee, but they will be 2 minutes. So the next hand I see up there is Mary Ann Moore.
Hey, thank you. I'm an aquatic ecologist living here in Sherborn, and I have conducted research in lakes, ponds, streams, and rivers for 40 years. And I object to this artificial turf project for 2 reasons. First, it pollutes the environment with microplastics, especially if rubber infill is used in the field. Rubber degrades into microplastics. And a recent study in Sweden estimated the amount of rubber shed from an artificial turf field. And using those numbers, I have estimated what would be shed from a 3-acre field, which is what is proposed at Laurel Farm. The amount of rubber shed in 1 year would range from 10,000 to 16,000 pounds. And again, that rubber degrades into microplastics, and those microplastics move into surface waters, such as streams, rivers, lakes, and ponds. And there, these tiny particles are ingested by aquatic animals, causing a decline in their survivorship and reproduction. But more worrisome is that microplastics absorb toxic chemicals, such as methylmercury and PCBs. So microplastics act as a vector for moving those dangerous chemicals up to the top of the aquatic food chain, endangering top predators such as birds, fish, and predaceous mammals. Now, I object to this proposal for a second reason, and that is that it contributes to the ethos of a throwaway culture, because these artificial turf fields have to be replaced every 10 to 15 years at great cost, but they cannot be recycled easily. So for these reasons, I cannot support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And if you can put your hand down, great, thank you. Next person I see is Dan Sichel, or Sichel. I want to pronounce your name correctly, Dan.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Dan Sickle. I've lived at 116 Lake Street for about 9 years. It's very nice to see everybody this evening. In my day job, I teach economics at Wellesley College, and I have some concerns about the premise that this project is going to be tax neutral or revenue enhancing for the town. I guess I'd feel more comfortable if there were a formal engineering and construction plan, a formal business plan that had been laid out, and maybe they're available and I haven't found them yet, but seeing all the numbers and how it all adds up would be super helpful. One thing that I'm concerned about with the numbers is in Dave's presentation mentioned that they thought each field could be used for 1,200 hours a year. So if I'm doing the math right, that would mean 40 hours a week for 30 weeks. Again, maybe that's standard for these fields, but it would be interesting to see comparisons with other towns and what usage is like in other towns. Also concerned about the replacement costs and what happens if the revenue doesn't come in as projected in Dave's presentation. And is the town on the hook then? Who's responsible for covering the replacement or disposal costs if the revenue turns out not to be sufficient? So putting all that together, it's just 2 minutes to try to slip this in, but it seems to me that this exposes the town to some pretty significant financial risk. And let me leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you. If you can put your hand down, great. Next one up is Matt Vitale.
Thanks so much. Matt Vitale, 1 Mill Street. I think piggybacking on some of Dan's comments, so there's a website for the Friends of Laurel Field, which includes some of this information for folks who are interested. I would echo some of the concerns, I think, particularly related to the cost modeling, which seems to be based on the going rates for new fields and regional communities that have put in new fields, which presumably ours would be in the first year, but would not be in year 6 or 7. And so I share the concern about the ability for these to be self-sustaining. I additionally worry that if we do find that there's leachate from the fields that presents environmental concerns, there could be the potential for significant costs of disposal in the future, and that could additionally mitigate any hoped for benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you put your hand down, the next person up is Daryl Beardsley. Daryl?
Hey, I'm actually going to speak as a resident, 54 Forest Street. So the basic thing I'd like to address is the PFAS content in the grass and backing. PFAS are a very complex set of chemicals, wide-ranging. They contain carbon and fluorine bonds that are extremely durable and thus make them very persistent in the environment, and that'll be important later on in a moment. There are about at least 4,500 varieties of PFAS. 6 are regulated. There are tests for about 30. I say 6, the EPA just added another one to it. It's very difficult to study and analyze. It's expensive. It's hard to figure out what they are because really the companies who manufacture them are more aware of what it is. In any case, I can't imagine anyone has not heard about PFAS, but they are present in the grass, even though there are claims that it's not there. They serve a really important function in manufacturing. And because so few are regulated and there are so many varieties and they all look very similar, what happens is that manufacturers just switch to an unregulated one. So we continue to see that content showing up in the grass and the backing. In the future, here's where the problem comes. Besides being released to the environment over time, either leaching out or being part of the microplastics that were mentioned earlier, is they haven't even developed the technologies yet that will destroy PFAS. No one is going to want to recycle anything with PFAS. It's too big of a liability, so destruction will be the only route. They don't even have the technologies to do it yet. It's hard to break the bonds apart, and even if you do break the bonds apart, usually thermally, they tend to reform. In any case, it could be thousands and thousands of dollars a ton to dispose of at the end of their life.
Thank you, Daryl. Richard Robinson is up next. I can't hear you, Richard. Want to unmute yourself, Richard?
Thought I had, sorry. I have 2 concerns. One is environmental and one is economic. On the environmental case, I cannot imagine it's good to overlay plastic and ground up tires on top of its aquifer. It's just not the direction that we should be going in. We should be going in the direction of restoring, repairing, regenerating that aquifer, not degrading it further. I've heard the arguments that, well, it's next to the dump anyway. That's true, but that's not an excuse for making things worse. On the economics, we have in this town currently a project that has been a problem for a number of years. We still don't know, I'm talking about the library, of course, we still don't know how much it's going to cost this town, how many millions over what we voted. And I think it's irresponsible for us to take on an additional burden of debt for a discretionary project that, until we know how much the library is going to cost us. I appreciate that this project is proposing that it be cost neutral in the long run. That's very nice to see, but there's no guarantee in the warrant article that it is going to be cost neutral. The town could be on the hook for $1 million for the construction of it, and as others have pointed out, untold amounts of money if the recycling of this field at the end of its well-known life is different than these rosy projections. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. The next person I see is Chris's iPhone, and since I don't know who that is, if you would please introduce yourself and give your address.
Thank you, Mary. Chris Brown, 14 Rockwood Street. I'm going to save most of my comments until Saturday. However, I would say that I will be rising to oppose this motion for multiple reasons. And I do this despite the fact that I was a daddy coach for soccer, baseball, and other things. And I have for the last 15 years been a referee. And so my support for youth sports continues. So I will be rising to talk specifically in opposition to this motion on Saturday. But I would like to give everybody a chance to speak and keep this meeting as short as possible. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you, Chris. And next is Kelly McClintock.
Thank you, Mary. Kelly McClintock, 65 Woodland Street. I'm chair of the Town Open Space Committee. Our original mission was to prepare a new open space and recreation plan, which was approved by the select board and the state in 2018 and was incorporated almost entirely into the town master plan. And I would like to just read one quote from each, which explain where the open space committee is. The guiding principle of the open space and recreation plan includes a vision of a future Sherborn in which water resources will be protected and maintained for residents' needs and long-term environmental and human health. Very simple principle. And a major goal of the master plan is to ensure that water protection and conservation practices in Sherborn provide the best possible protection of shared water resources based on the best available scientific evidence. And those explain why the Open Space Committee has deep misgivings about this proposal. I'd like to add just a personal observation that I am a frequent visitor to the Medfield soccer fields at Wheelock School. These are intensively used from early in the season to late. They're always in great shape. They're natural grass, and I think we can do just as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Eric and Molly Cullum is next.
Hi, good evening. Eric Cullum here at 3 Greenwood Street. I guess I'll be the first parent to speak up that's an actual current coach and involved with youth soccer and sports here in town. I'm also a member on the Dover Sherborn board. So I want to put a couple things here. So I'm not an environmental scientist. I'm going to put out to the side environmental and cost concerns for the moment. Although I do trust the EPA report that's unequivocally stated there's no connection between any of what was currently stated and what the people on this call talked about. Additionally, PFAS is not included or in the field whatsoever for this proposal, so those comments were confusing to me. I did want to speak on the behalf of a groundswell of parents and coaches who are in support of this article, along with my 2 daughters. So the fields in Sherborn and Dover, for that matter, for the most of the time, are unusable or not ideal. This is mostly because of zero irrigation, overuse, or plan on when wet. Laurel, as most of you know, if you haven't been there in some time, I'm there almost every day, is in a continual state of disrepair, season after season. Potholes, inability to play, kids hurting themselves on the field and whatnot. Being a coach in town for many years, I've seen the need year over year for working fields. Nothing is worse than canceling a game from an out-of-town perspective or your in-town practice with a 1-hour notice. Rescheduling is a pretty big deal these days, especially with COVID. Both my daughters, Addie and Bryn, play field hockey, lacrosse, etc. They like grass and turf and are excited to have options in town. This isn't a one-all and be done. Field hockey and lacrosse are almost unplayable at Laurel on grass. This is due to what's called jump up, where the ball is passed on the ground and the fields are in such disrepair, they bounce up and hit the kids, resulting in injury. Parking and traffic in the ingress and egress is beyond confusing at Laurel. People parked in multiple fashions. It causes unnecessary confusion. This article obviously solves that. And Sherborn needs to be more accessible, versatile play for all youth at all ages.
Time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Next is Frank Jenkins.
Okay. Good evening. Dave, you've made a nice presentation. The comments that have been made since have not shown you much support. I know this is a 2/3 vote too, I believe, Mary, is that right?
That is correct.
And if we are not able to get 2/3 vote supporting this article, is there an alternative that you and the Recreation Commission might consider? I think most people feel that Laurel Farm fields have to be improved. When I was a soccer dad back years ago, we used to work on them ourselves and try to improve them. That was really just an amateur effort on our part. But I think we should invest substantially in these fields, including drainage, including bringing in other turf to bring in to result in a good natural turf. And we should put in a well there to provide watering during the summer when the fields dry out. We do have good fields here on Western Avenue at the soccer field down there off of Pleasant Street. And they are wonderful fields built by the town. The DPW back 15 years or 20 years ago built those fields with money gifted by the Howard, what's his name? Fessenden, to restore those fields and keep them in the recreation program. So I'm wondering if you have a backup, Dave, that you might want to present at town meeting to get some consideration and support for moving forward, and if that's at all possible.
Dave, would you like to respond?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I'll go back to the original goals of the project, which were to provide an extended season. I think we looked at all options. In the end, there isn't any way of preventing the rainouts. There isn't any way of protecting the fields. I love the idea of continuing to maintain the natural grass fields, and that's part of our plan is to leverage the artificial field to actually invest in the natural grass fields. In the end, it's a significant investment with, for the most part, the same playing season. The reason why we see such great grass over at Pheasant is it's the field that's closed the most. We don't let anyone on it when it's wet, when it's muddy, when it rains, and actually investing a significant amount of money in the grass fields would mean even less time for our youth sports on the fields, because we would be even more protective of ruining them. So it really is a trade-off of, providing an option that is durable when the season's early and the grass needs to germinate and can be played on when it's wet, versus probably something like we have right now, because we don't put a lot of money. I shouldn't say we don't put a lot of money into the fields. We do our best with what we have, but a significant investment in the field would mean that we would have an asset that we would need to protect as well.
Thanks, Dave. Next person up is Gavin.
Yes, Gavin Mish at 29 Cider Hill. So there's a lot of concern of PFAs in the turf field, and there is a report from the Martha's Vineyard turf attempt by an unbiased third party that showed that the PFAs in the soil had the same concentration, and at times actually a higher concentration than the PFAs in the proposed turf field. On top of that, manufacturers are now making turf fields without any PFAs and will certify as much upon delivery of the field. So any argument here regarding PFAs is a bit misleading because they're not really an issue in this particular case. And it's not an issue in this warrant because there will be no PFAs in this field and the soil already has them. There are also concerns about crumb rubber being used as the infill. The ultimate choice for infill has not been made, but it could very likely be an organic Brockfill infill. And the Board of Health gets a strong input into the materials being used. So the infill could likely be organic, and the Board of Health gets say in that matter. And so again, it is not a strong issue for this particular warrant. Lastly, you'll hear concerns about toxicity in the town wells and the water supply. Those are important concerns, but there is direct testing of wells at Wayland's turf field over the past 15 years or so, and it has shown no change whatsoever to any of those levels to their water from the turf fields. We actually have a turf field in our backyard right now at Dover Sherborn High School. It's been there for a decade, and no evidence of any water source issues at all from those fields whatsoever for any Dover or Sherborn resident. So we have direct evidence of real life turf fields that have been used for a decade or more, and they've been shown to be safe. And so hearing all the possible things that could go wrong, while scary, is tough to match up against real world use of turf fields that have been safe for a decade and more.
Time.
So much.
Thank you, Gavin. Carol, is this Carol? Yeah.
It is.
Before I have you speak a second time, you're the last one. So I just want to make sure that there is no one else who has not spoken previously who would like to speak before we go to a second round.
It looks like Craig.
I see Craig Seal, Cole. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name and I apologize. Craig?
Yes, hi, it's Craig Seal. I'm at 110 Bogastow Brook. I'm one of the co-presidents of DS Soccer. And I won't, what's been said already is the issues that we have with the current grass fields. One of the things I'll add to that is that we've recently, in a recent season, Fessenden was closed for half of the season and Laurel was closed for about a quarter of that season. And so that's a real problem for us. And the other thing is that, as was mentioned, there is no preseason. And so our kids come into the season out of shape and that can lead to injuries. So that's a real problem as well. What we do in cases where we are unable to access the fields, we go out of town and have to rent turf fields in order to play our games. So, we're basically spending that money out of town. We'd rather spend that in town on a turf field. And, the last thing that I would say is that what we're talking about here is the design of the field. And I would ask people to leave open the possibility that it can be designed in a way and constructed in a way that is as environmentally conscious as possible, and in a way that will enable a benefit to about 1,500 youth sports players that we have in Dover and Sherborn right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, Carol, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm speaking now just as a resident, Carol McGarry, 262 Western Avenue. Today, we received a letter from Massachusetts Sierra Club that's addressed to Sherborn Town Meeting regarding this project. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I wanted to mention a few things that they said. The letter states that 2 fields would remove 3 acres of natural ecosystem that sequester carbon and cover it with plastic. It goes on to describe the loss of habitat. The turf is often sanitized with chemical biocides, which is not required for grass and would further degrade the surrounding habitat. Turf fields consist of a large number of undocumented mixtures of petrochemical plastics and chemicals of varying toxicity. All plastics are toxic throughout their entire life cycle. For Martha's Vineyard, they mention a variety of toxic PFAS chemicals were found in laboratory tests at all 5 major components for a proposed artificial field on Martha's Vineyard. Some of the PFAS may derive from the plastic manufacturing process. It goes on to describe many of the same things that some of the experts, I'm very impressed with Marianne's statement, for instance, about the science. It does say that, again, that plastic recycling is not really working and is infeasible for turf. Films like synthetic blades and foams are extremely problematic. And it mentions that communities such as Andover, Brookline, Springfield, Swampscott, Newburyport, and Methuen have rejected artificial turf. It urges town meeting to oppose this multi-field complex, especially given the surrounding ecologically sensitive areas, which include an Audubon sanctuary and the Charles River watershed. So this will be submitted to town meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Carol.
Sure.
Tom?
Mary, thank you. Tom Traynor, 97 Washington Street. Just a short procedural question. When we started discussion on this article, you read it, and what you read was much longer and different language than what's in the advisory copy I was mailed. Is that language you're using available somewhere on the town website, or?
What I read is the actual motion that advisory will make, and that is owned right now by advisory. So is Steve Sy on here?
Mary, this is Courtney Eck. Steve is sort of here. I don't know if he can answer at the moment.
Okay.
He's putting our son to bed.
Okay. So
You can research that and get back to us. That's fine. Thank you very much.
So right now, it is advisory's document right now, and that was what I read from. And
okay,
I'm
thank
sure
you.
they'd be happy to, send that on to you if you ask them. Is there anyone else with a question or a comment before we move on? Anyone else wish to come back and speak again? No? Okay, thank you very much. Article 10. Sorry.
Mary, George.
George?
Just
George
one
Morrow.
quick thing, just because I don't know if anybody else from the select board's on here. I just want to point out that the select board, I know a lot of boards have written letters in opposition to this. From the select board, I just wanted you to know that we supported this 3-1, and advisory did support this 5-4. I know the minority report seems to be what people are reading, but advisory did support this 5-4, and the select board supported it 3-1. And since everybody else changes hats, I'm going to change one too. As a parent, just as an example, last week, 2 days, lacrosse practice was canceled. All the kids went home and didn't get to exercise. I think we've got to look at the health issues with the kids when they don't have the opportunity to play, just to add on to Craig's. Thank you.
Okay, and Chris's iPhone would like to speak again.
Thank you, Mary. Just on that thought of people's health, kids' health. Well, let's not forget that if the water gets contaminated, it is an issue of health issue in the town. But apart from that, the motions themselves, Mary, since I believe they were voted on by advisory, they should be part of the public record.
Well, no, actually, the motions were not voted on publicly. The advisory positions were voted publicly, and following that, there is what we call a motions meeting that involves myself, the advisory committee, town council, and the point of that is to actually write the motions in correct legal language and so forth that are read by advisory at the meeting. So that meeting was not a public meeting because there was no quorum of members from any particular committee.
Okay, yeah, that's a protocol change since I was on advisory, Mary. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, I see people wanting to speak again. It's fine to speak if you have something new to add. So, Richard?
Yeah, I'm about the motion. This motion is as pointed out, significantly different from what's in the advisory report. It has major bits of legalese that are impossible to follow orally. If this is not available ahead of town meeting, I would plead with advisory to have it printed out so that people could actually look at it and think about it. But in fact, I find it pretty surprising that a motion of that complexity has not been presented to townspeople to think about in the week before a meeting in which we're being asked to approve borrowing money. Thanks.
Carol?
Mary, there are a number of comments about the fact that there was some misunderstanding that whether Concom was the kind of the statement on behalf of all the boards. And in fact, there was certainly no time for all of the boards to get together and take a vote on that. And there's some comments that somebody from Board of Health would like to make a statement. I know from the previous meeting that it was a very short statement, and I just would request that you allow someone from Board of Health to make that statement.
Oh, sure. Anybody from Board of Health can make a statement. It's a 2-minute comment. You know, you and I, Carol, had
yeah, there was a
filled out the form as the formal presenter for the opposition to the article, and no one else contacted me to do that. And I did email you saying that.
Yep. No, I understand. I think that there just wasn't a communication among all the boards, so there was some misunderstanding.
So certainly, if there is someone here from Board of Health and they want to speak as a citizen or as a member of the Board of Health, they have 2 minutes to comment. So I'm happy to entertain that.
Hi, this is Daryl. I could put it up so we could go over it. So hold on a second. I didn't think I had anything more than a single 2 minutes, so I put it away. If you want to take somebody else in the meantime, it's going to take me just a moment too.
Oh, Steve Sy. Yes, let's hear from Steve. Chair of Advisory, Steve Sy. Why don't you speak, Steve, and then we'll go back to Daryl after she gets her information together.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Steve Sy. I am the chair of the advisory committee. I understand there have been some questions about the motion on this article. In general, I would say that the motions that are written in the advisory report are not necessarily exactly word for word the motions that are read at the meeting. As Mary mentioned, we have a motions meeting with town council, and generally we add a bunch more legalese to make sure that legally the motions are accomplishing what they are meant to accomplish based on advisory's vote, and then also sort of the parameters of each article. For this one in particular, we actually last week on Wednesday, advisory had a posted public meeting where we actually specifically discussed the motion on this one. And so that is available to watch on YouTube, or it should be. I know that I've forwarded that to DSC TV. So anybody who's interested should be able to look at that meeting, and I screen share the entire text of the motion near the end of the meeting. But anybody who wants to specifically see the text of it, you can email me directly. You can find my information on the town website, and I can give you a copy of that particular motion because it was shared in a public meeting. There is no intent for that motion to be different from what was voted at the public hearing by advisory. Again, there was some legalese. We also had to add some specific language about the stabilization fund. But again, the intention was not to hide anything in that motion. Again, it was 5-4 on advisory, so it was pretty split. So both sides were trying to make sure that everything was on the up and up. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm perhaps was misleading. I had forgotten about the subsequent advisory public meeting on the motion for this particular article. I was referring to the normal motions meeting. So I have Matt Beavers. Oh, I'm sorry, Daryl, go ahead.
No, Matt Beavers.
Hi, this is Matt Beavers, 10 Coolidge Street. Speaking at the moment in my role on the Board of Health, I was going to read the statement here that we put together after a couple hours of discussion at our meetings. So we first to address the issue of player impacts. And so we felt that our purview here was related to player injury. And so regarding player injury, including concussion, lower extremity musculoskeletal injury, and abrasion, there was insufficient evidence to support a benefit of either natural or artificial turf over the alternative. As a result, we did not feel that these considerations should materially impact the choice of turf from a public health standpoint. We also had extensive discussion of environmental impacts.
Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry. I'm looking at one thing and then Daryl has a different one, so I'm a little off. I think here the same issue is that we didn't issue a statement on surface temperatures. We did note that some infills reach a high temperature, but felt like it was fairly obvious that we shouldn't be exposing people to that level of temperature, so we didn't feel the need to comment. Go ahead, Daryl. And then finally, regarding impact on ground and surface water, we did find through an independent review of literature that there's evidence that compounds contained in turf can have toxic effects. We also found that there's evidence that these compounds can enter ground and surface waters from an artificial field. However, the concentrations reached from a field and the impact on water supply and public health could not be quantified at this time. And so it's a little equivocal, but we felt like that's what the evidence supported in our review.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And that seems to be it. So we'll move on now from Article 9 to Article 10. And that is the capital improvement plan. And my intention on Saturday is to treat line 1A, the command vehicle for the fire department. That will be treated separately because that is a free cash item and all the others are borrowings. So I don't want to confuse the vote there. The quantum of the vote is different for free cash and for 2/3. So, but the rest of the article, the rest of the line items will be dealt with as a consent agenda. So I will read the titles of each one, and if people wish to discuss that particular item on Saturday, they can call a hold. And we'll vote anything that wasn't held, and then we'll go back and talk about the individual line items that were. For tonight, I'm just going to go through and read each article, and if somebody wants to talk about it, we'll just stop right there and then, because there's no voting or anything tonight. So Article 1 is a command vehicle. Line item 1, sorry, Article 10 is a command vehicle for the fire department. Advisory moves favorable action and that $45,000 be transferred from free cash for the purchase of the fire department command vehicle. So are there any comments or questions on that line item in Article 10? Okay. Line item 2, 2 cruisers for the police department, 1 marked and 1 unmarked. Total price $99,000. These from line item 2 through 7 will be borrowings, and they will need to pass at town meeting by 2/3 vote.
Mary, just one thing. I think you missed our hose, which was, I believe 1B. That's a borrowing.
I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I went right over that. So yes. Well, okay. Let me deal with the cruisers because I'm talking about that right now, and then I'll go back. Sorry about that. So the 2 cruisers, does anyone have any comments on that? Okay. And then item 1B is the hose replacement for the fire department, $37,096. Do you want to say anything about it, Zach, or?
Yeah, I could talk about both if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah. I'll just share my screen and I'll make this brief and I'll go over both of them just in the interest of everybody's time. Well, for some reason, my computer won't let me share my screen. I've done it on this computer before, so I'll just speak about them, Mary. So we're looking to replace our current command vehicle with a new one, obviously. The current vehicle's been in service for the Sherborn Fire Department for approximately 3 years. And after 3 years of use, we found some issues with it. One being its size, both as a general day-to-day vehicle. It's about 22 feet long. And then when we use it as a command vehicle at incidents. It's about 30, 31 feet long, which is as long as our engine 4, which is our primary fire engine in town. At a lot of incidents, it's really tough to find sufficient space for that vehicle, especially up long driveways and on tight streets that we have in town. Another issue that we have with the current one is the fuel mileage. It gets about 9 to 10 miles per gallon. The hope is with the new one, which would be sort of an SUV, is that we can double that fuel mileage. And we're going to be selling the old one at auction to sort of offset the cost of the new one. And again, without my slides, that's just what I'll say in the command vehicle. And then we have 1B, which is fire hose replacement. We're looking to replace fire hose that's about 25 years old. It was actually originally donated, so it was in use before that. That was from the Massport Fire Department at Logan Airport. We have a testing company that comes out every year to test our hose. We've lost a lot of hose, and they recommend that we replace some so we can be in compliance with the NFPA standard for hose. And those are our 2 capital articles.
Okay, great. Thank you. I see Robert Johnson's hand up. Robert, is your question for Zach, or was it about the police?
Oh, it's for you.
For me, okay.
Is 1B a free cash?
It is not. It is
Thank
a borrow. Okay. So Dave Bento, are you on? And did you want to say anything about the police cruisers?
Good evening. Yes, I am here. As I presented to the Capital Budget Committee, the plan was to replace 3 current cruisers with 2 new cruisers. One of them will be a fully marked, and the other one will be an unmarked administrative package. And then the 3 cars that I'd be looking to get rid of, one of them is 2010 with over 100,000 miles. The other's a 2013 with over 80,000 miles, and the other's a fully marked car that's a 2016 that's already about 85,000 miles. So the plan was to reduce the fleet down 1 car. We think we can still function just fine, and that will also help us with some cost savings on our maintenance, which has been running pretty high this year. So again, the total is $99,000, and that also is offset a little bit by trade-in and by reusing some equipment from the current vehicles. We would repurpose and reuse some lights, radios, radar units, equipment such as that. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Chief Bento? No? Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Line item 3, repair and or renovation of town buildings and facilities, $369,000. Sean, do you have something you want to say?
Not really, unless there's questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Sean? I don't see any. How about the 1-ton truck? I'm sorry, equipment for the Department of Public Works, $82,704. Do you want to tell people what that actually is for?
What's up?
Do you want to tell people what that actually is for? I have equipment for the Department of Public Works, $82,704.
Are you going to stop at each item? I thought we were doing this as a consent.
That's on Saturday.
Okay.
You don't have to speak to it. I mean, you know, it's up to you.
I don't have much more to say than we already did. I mean, the equipment that's a pretty small number for DPW equipment. There's a dingo, which is almost like a walk behind machine with some implements for the fields and other small equipment needs. And then a roadside mower, which if you're not sure why we need that, you'll see in a couple weeks when the roadsides are up about 4 feet and the grass is growing. Let me just keep going then.
Okay.
The 1-ton truck's $109,000. That's another hook lift that shares bodies with one we bought a couple years ago. It's a multi-use truck, so it can sand and plow in the winter. It can run the chipper. It can run the leaf sucker. and just be just a dump body and a flatbed as well. Roadway management is based on an assessment that we have an engineering firm do each year to determine how much we should be investing in the roads to maintain a certain quality so that we're not falling behind on the roads, which we were previously doing. I'll stop there.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on items 3, 4A, 4B, and 4C for Sean? Okay, I don't see any. How about the Pine Hill Road, Sean? $1,611,735. Is that the right amount, or am I out of date here?
Hang on one sec. I'm gonna try to screen share a video I had up so I could do this. Sorry. Stand by. That didn't work, did it?
Well, yes, it did.
Yep, there it is.
It's right there.
Is it playing now?
Well, it's a still. It's in stop action, sort of.
Then I shared the wrong one.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a video. It's just going very.
No, I started it and stopped. I shared it.
Oh, okay.
I had too many of them open. Stand by. Oh. Sorry, it was only 3 minutes, so I have another minute to figure this out. How do I unshare it?
You have some time left from your other articles.
John, there should be a button that allows you unshare.
Stop sharing.
Look up.
Thanks.
Yeah, there you go.
Problem is now I minimized it on the other screen. I'm running 2 screens, so it's kind of messing with me.
Sean, you want me to speak while you're looking for it?
Go ahead.
Is that okay with you, Mary? It's Andrew Keogh.
Oh, sure. Andrew, I didn't recognize you there without a mask.
Sorry about that. So I have to admit, I'm the one who's been pushing so hard behind the scenes for this to happen as the superintendent. And, you know, I understand that we obviously want to be efficient with our funds, but we also need to be practical. Now, Sean, it looks like you've got that thing going now. So
it's rolling, right?
It's rolling. Yeah. Basically,
well, if you want to keep talking, or I'll take over.
No, it's your presentation. I'll just kick in when you're.
All right, I'm calling you off the stage for a minute.
Okay.
For anyone that had kids go through Pine Hill prior to this year, you don't realize what you're about to see, but what you're going to see is a shift. 2 things happened. We went to the switch on the school start time, and then a COVID pandemic. So there's a significant amount of parents that have started driving their kids to school each day. And I'm going to stop in a second. You're going to watch this video. There's a bus entering. Those parents are all parked on the right waiting to pick up. And that is a person trying to leave that almost went head on into the bus. This happens every day. It was just by chance. The one day Andrew Gillette was out there with his drone, he caught it. And it almost happened there again. Those cars on the right going up the hill are all waiting to pick up. This is what happens. We queue them in. The buses have to get up. Because remember, Pine Hill now lets out before the region. There's a little dwell, and then we have a few, I'm not sure what happened there. There's a few slides at the end that are going to show the new design. So we knew in, the early 2000s, we needed to do something because the parking was extending onto Elliott Street, North Main Street. It's gotten worse with the pickup and the school switch. This is cars trying to exit. We've all been through this. You try to exit the road. There's parked cars there. And it's dangerous getting out at the light.
Sorry, 2 minutes. Are you going to let him talk?
Yeah, I am, because he has some, he had time left over from his other articles, and he had a failure.
Yeah, I'd appreciate a few more minutes. This is about the kids. That was, well, a partial shot of the buses. You'll see more in a minute. This is a late bus getting to the region. This happens every day. I'm not sure why, but it happens. So there's already kids migrating towards the buses in what used to be a loop. It's now segmented because they're exiting on the access road. That's the queuing. This happens every day. You can imagine that car at the lights that just was there is a sitting duck to get hit by a dump truck. This is just a quick shot of the new design. It'll be a one-way road in, one-way road out. We get rid of the bus loop. We channel the cars through and they exit onto Elliott Street. There's some of the improvements in the front, handicap spaces that actually conform to the standards. That's some drop off. The hashed area is still pavement, but it's drop off in front of the school. That's a shot of the rear parking lot. There's a significant number of spaces increased. And last Friday at noon, we opened the bids. It went out to public bid, and the engineer's estimate was 1.4 million, and we came in at 1.363 million for the low bid. So the original number had a contingency on the 1.4. So we're very happy to have come in. It was a good bid. It was a tight bidding, so it wasn't an anomaly. And we expect that will be the bid we'll accept should we get the funding.
Okay, great. Are you done?
I'm done. I'm good.
So if you want to unshare your screen,
yeah, I will.
I can see. Okay, great. So people have their hands up. The first one I see is Eric and Molly Cullum.
It's Molly Cullum this time. Hi, Mary. I just wanted to make a comment about the video as a Pine Hill parent. One thing that you actually don't get to see in that video, the fun ad of the cars that are normally parked going downhill. With COVID, I would say there's a lot fewer, if any, parents that are visiting the school and parking along the other side of the road as well. So normally, not only do you have cars parked on the side that we saw where there's the line going up for pickup, there's usually cars also parked downhill on the other side. So what is kind of two-way traffic when those buses are coming through becomes even sometimes barely one way of traffic. And I've definitely been one of those cars that has met up with a bus if I'm coming home from library duty or something at the end of the day, and I'm trying to leave and a bus is coming up and there's one way of traffic. So then all the cars that are facing the bus have to then back up, and it becomes a major traffic hazard. And I guess I just wanted to comment too about the parking. If you have ever been there as a Pine Hill parent for a concert or any kind of event, parking definitely can become an issue. So it's exciting to see that that's being addressed in that back lot as well. So really nicely done. That's all I wanted to say.
Hey, thank you, Molly. Just watching, if you could identify yourself.
Hi, sorry, I didn't know what apparatus I had. Susan Tyler, 26 Western Avenue. I just want to say that I've been a member of the Traffic Safety Committee since 2004, when this project first came forward. We fully supported it then. We fully supported it now. I'd also like to say that it's not emphasized enough that the Pine Hill School is our designated emergency shelter for the town of Sherborn. And to have one road in and one road out is very unsafe. I have all of my family members here have all been on the fire department. If something happens on Pine Hill, we've had trees come down, wires come down, accidents. You're stuck up at Pine Hill. Well, the fire apparatus, the emergency services are attending to the situation. And one of the things I'd like to emphasize is everybody keeps referring to this as the access road, the project at hand. It's not an access road. It was presented originally, it's the Pine Hill extension. It's not just an access. This will improve parking up at the top, flow of traffic for visitors, the school buses. It also will provide sidewalk. It's the time has come. There really hasn't been any redesign of that driveway, the road, the parking since I attended there in 1968. The time has come.
Okay. Thank you, Susie. Richard Robinson.
Richard Robinson, 117 Mill Street. I get I get how this design improves the flow of traffic out. I don't quite see, maybe I missed it in your presentation, how is it going to shorten that line of waiting cars coming up from the light? And if it doesn't do that, is that going to be safer for that last car in line?
You want me to answer that, Mary?
Who are you asking to answer?
Do you want me to answer that?
Oh, yes. I don't want to answer it. You answer.
I almost should reshare my screen, but to answer the question, the bus loop now causes the cars to have to stop early. What you didn't see in the slide was the buses will queue up against the building. The cars will queue up just inside them, almost like another chute. So they'll wrap all the way around the front and into another lane that'll be held until the buses leave, but they'll make it all the way around the building. They won't be held at the same spot. So in theory, if the same number of parents are picking up, they'll all be into the lane and up and around.
Okay. Okay, Richard? Okay. Anyone else have a comment on anything that Sean has talked about? Okay, then the next is item 6, replacement of the separate water systems with a joint water management system, public water supply at Woodhaven and Leland Farms, $198,000. Sean, I think you're the person to speak on this also. Is that correct?
I'll speak briefly. I didn't have any slides for this, but I had brought them to other meetings. So this project is the result of several years of demand orders from DEP. Both Leland and Woodhaven have been stricken with slightly acidic water, and at this point, the only way to fix that is going to be add a chemical addition process. It's best to do one full system rather than two systems that reside on the same property. Most people don't realize Woodhaven and Leland are on the same property, but most of Leland's on town property. So the engineers, we use the same operator, which is Whitewater. The engineers designed an interconnection between the two, which is going to add quite a bit of resiliency and keep them from both having to have a redundant system, which will lessen the operating costs for the life of the system.
Okay. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions or comments on this? Okay, I don't see any. So item number 7, architectural study senior center for the Council on Aging, $40,000. We have Chris, I believe, going to speak on that. Yes? No? No one is speaking tonight on that?
Chris, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'll be happy to speak on it if there are questions.
So you have no presentation to make, is that?
I don't have a presentation. I'll just be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Comments, Mary?
Pardon me?
Comments?
Yes, questions, comments, whatever.
Can I speak?
Yes, I don't know who I'm speaking to.
April. It's April.
April,
I'm
sorry.
Contini.
Okay. I couldn't see your hand.
Okay. April Contini, Mill Street, 41-year resident, obviously a senior citizen.
Okay.
I'm not asking you questions. I'm commenting on this.
Okay.
Architecture, my experience in town is that architectural studies generally mean that it's going to happen and has happened. This talks of dedicated space for seniors, and it refers to evaluating 3 sites, which to me means that it's a given that we have decided to do this. I don't see the need for a dedicated senior center. I think we have we were creating redundant services with Medfield, Natick, Holliston, all have wonderful offerings. And from my experience with some of the things I've attended in Sherborn, a lot of people do come from other towns and they don't mind being in the basement of Teresa, the facilities that we have. Also, I question why there cannot be space found in the library, which looks like it's going to be a gigantic building. So I am opposed to this study, and I'm surprised that we can't find citizens in town with all the talent that we have to do a study. I don't see why we have to spend $40,000 on studying something that maybe not everyone wants. My only comment.
Okay, thank you, April. Are there any other comments? No? Okay. All right then. We're done with that. Okay, so moving on now to Article 11. And I will tell you that Article 11 through 13, I intend to treat with a consent agenda as well on Saturday, but I will go through each one tonight. Article 11, the use of free cash, and the motion is to take no action there. The reason being that there is no need for free cash to be used for anything that is not specified elsewhere in the warrant. So that's that. Article 12, adopt a law allowing the assessor to collect tax data until 6:30. Are there any comments or questions on that? No? Okay. Article 13, amend general laws, Chapter 5, registration and license requirements for dogs, and that will change the wording of when you have to register your dog from the first business day of March to annually by March 1st or the first business day of March each year. Are there any comments on that? Robert Johnson. Robert, do you need to unmute?
There we go. Does that require a 2/3 vote?
No. Majority. I would check if town council is still on, but I have it down as a majority.
Hi, Marion. I'm still here. Hang on just one second.
I think it's only zoning that requires 2/3, but
There's certain finance articles do as well, but I'm sorry.
this is Article 13, amend the general bylaws.
Yes, but sorry, it's majority. I have a handwritten note that's not that legible.
Yeah.
General bylaws require a majority vote.
general bylaws require a majority.
They
Right.
do, yes.
That's what I have here.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, are there any other comments on Article 13? Okay. Article 14, amendment to frontage requirements of open space subdivisions.
Right, that's me, Mary.
Yes.
And I'd like to share my screen.
Sure.
This is Marion Neutra, Chair of the Planning Board, and I am speaking for the Planning Board on this. I'll hold on just a second. There we go. And let me get that going. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Marion Neutra, Prospect Street, Chair of the Planning Board. The Planning Board is proposing a modification of one section of the open space subdivision bylaw that was adopted at town meeting last August. You may recall that according to state law, any parcel of land that's big enough to subdivide into 2 or more lots can be developed as a subdivision. And the bylaw established Sherborn's preference for open space design, which requires 60% of the land to be protected as open space. A conventional subdivision is still possible by a special permit if it can be shown to be environmentally better. The intent of the law is to allow the town to choose the better option in each case. Now, at the time, there was concern that with house lots confined to 40% of the parcel, open space subdivision houses could be more visible from the road, and this might impact the scenic character of the town. So in the original bylaw, we included a provision that house lots on the existing road must have the full frontage requirement in the zoning district. And this made sense with large properties. But as we tested the bylaw on smaller parcels, we found an unintended consequence. And this property that I'm showing here, if you can move your thumbnails over, you can see it. This property illustrates the problem. The property is hypothetical, but it's typical of many parcels that could be small subdivisions in the future. It's a 7-acre lot with an existing house and
That's 2 minutes.
And frontage for one.
No, Marion's the presenter, so she gets 5.
Okay, she can go longer. Okay.
There's undisturbed, thank you. There's undisturbed forest and wetlands and perhaps a trail nearby. So in the 2-acre zoning district, this could be a conventional subdivision with 3 house lots. Might look like, let's see how I make this forward. There we go. A conventional subdivision by state law requires only enough frontage on the existing road to build a new road. And the required frontage for the new houses is created on the new subdivision road. Some lots may or may not have frontage on the existing road, but it's irrelevant. An open space design would actually make more sense here. But because of the large frontage requirement in our bylaw, it's impossible. And that runs counter to the intent of the bylaw, which is that any property that could be a subdivision under state law can potentially be designed as an open space subdivision. That could look like this, for example. This revision in the warrant article eliminates the frontage requirement on the existing road so that we can evaluate designs on a level playing field. In this case, an open space subdivision would provide forest and trail connections to be shared by all the residents. But we still must protect the view from the existing road. So I should note there are already some controls in the bylaw. First, there can be no more houses than would be in a conventional design. And there's a bigger setback from the road, 100 foot instead of 60 feet. And this warrant article adds more protections. First, subdivision house driveways can only be off of internal subdivision roads. And we required a vegetated buffer for screening across the entire front of the property within the setback area, at least 50 foot deep. In reviewing this article, advisory board members pointed out that the vegetated buffer requirement is rather rigid. For example, what if the area along the road is an attractive meadow or maybe a pond? So we're proposing an amendment to the warrant article to require screening only of the houses, not the whole property, and placed wherever it's most appropriate. So this slide summarizes the revisions proposed in Article 14. First of all, it eliminates the frontage requirement on the existing road. So now it's the same as a conventional subdivision. The driveways must be to the internal subdivision road, and we require visual screening. On the last point, we have amended the visual screening requirement to make it more flexible, but still protect the scenic view from the road. It's important to point out that there's nothing in this bylaw or the revision that enables more subdivision development in Sherborn. It won't change the number of developable lots or the number of houses that can be built. So a yes vote on Article 14 only puts open space and conventional subdivision development on equal footing. And it will allow the developer to propose and the planning board to approve an open space design wherever it's better for the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Are there, if you want to unshare your screen so I can see if anyone has their
I
hand.
would be happy to.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on this Article 14?
I don't see any.
I don't see any either. Okay, Article 15, acquisition disposition of land at 31 Hunting Lane. I'm going to read this as well because as I did the, I'm sorry, Andrew, are you?
My apologies. I just switched over on something.
Okay. As I did on the other article where I think there may be significant comment. I move favorable action that the select board be authorized to acquire by purchase the land located at 31 Hunting Lane, more particularly described as 22.93 of the 24.93 acres of land shown on the town of Sherborn assessors as parcel 11-3C on the assessor's map 6 and parcel 3B on assessor's map 11, which parcels are also identified as assessor's parcel ID 1103C and assessor's parcel ID 1103B, which parcels were assessed, valued, and taxed pursuant to MGL Chapter 61B in FY 2020 and earlier for general municipal purposes, contingent upon receipt of $950,000 in private funds for such acquisition, and if such parcels are acquired by the town, that the select board be authorized to dispose of said property or any interest therein by lease or sale or otherwise in accordance with applicable law on such terms and conditions as may be established by the select board. And we have a presenter here in favor of the article, and that is John Halamka. And I'm just going to make a couple of comments here up front that it is important that people speaking to this article speak only to the article itself and within the scope of the article. The scope of this, the scope of this article is to enable the to authorize the select board to purchase and dispose of land upon receipt of $950,000 in private funds. And that is what we're discussing here. So, John Halamka, you have a presentation to make, I believe.
I do indeed. Well, thanks so much, Mary. And I will speak only to the article as you have just described. And so let me go ahead and share my screen. And let's make sure you can see this. And it is now shared. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Excellent. So what I'm going to speak with you about tonight is Unity Farm Sanctuary is a charity established in 2016 that is an educational and conservation organization providing benefits to the Sherborn community. It's home to 300 abused, disabled, and abandoned animals, but it is truly a community benefits organization providing community service for 400 local volunteers. And that includes 3 miles of open hiking trails accessible to the public 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year without restriction. And to give you a sense, for those who don't have familiarity with trails, this is the trail map for Unity Farm Sanctuary and the adjacent Sherborn Rural Land Trust. As you'll see, we connect Green Lane, we connect Zions, Unity Lane, and you can see it's proximate to 27 and the Douse Orchard. Specifically to this article tonight, we know, as you have just heard, that there is the 61B right of first refusal on these 22 acres adjacent to Unity Farm Sanctuary, appraised at $950,000. Unity Farm Sanctuary has signed a memorandum of understanding with the town to fund the purchase of the property and its maintenance in perpetuity. And that's, of course, including ensuring that it is preserved in its current state. Funds have already been set aside and financial statements and CPA attestation provided to the town. We would create a new trail system which would connect all the existing 3 miles of trails with the Bay Circuit Trail, which would link hunting downtown Maple Green, Zions, and Unity Lane in perpetuity. In effect, this means that the Sherborn public could walk to Newburyport in the north and Duxbury in the south in contiguous forest lands, given the connectivity of all these trails. As I said, it will be conserved in perpetuity for the benefit of the public and will be owned by the charity and overseen by a 7-member board for future generations. It is not dependent on Kathy or I as the founders of the charity. It will live far beyond us. To show you the sense of what we would do you've heard about lot 3B and 3C. And you'll see these dotted red lines showing trails connecting what is today at the Unity Farm Sanctuary called the Old Cart Path, which traverses from the Douse Orchard down to the railroad tracks. That would connect in, allowing access to Hunting Lane, as well as some circular loop trails on lots 3B and 3C. Obviously, this would be any trail work developed in coordination with Concom and ensure that we respected property lines, wetland boundaries, and all appropriate town restrictions and suggestions. So I want to just end by saying the commitment that we have to preserving this land as open space is strong. And just as the rest of Unity Farm will last in perpetuity for the benefit of the town, it's our intent to ensure that this open space is benefiting us all without development.
Thank you, John. Now, I have had a request from the landowner, the current landowner, Mr. Libarski, to speak at the meeting tonight, and he is not a Sherborn registered voter, but since he is the owner of the land, it was decided that he would be allowed to speak this evening. So if Mr. Libarski is here and he would like to speak now, this would be the time for him to do that.
I don't see anything.
Okay, I don't see anyone looking to speak here. So I would now ask, are there any comments or questions on this article? I don't see any comments or questions either. Yes, I do. Sorry. So the first is John Garrison.
Yes, thank you, Mary. John Garrison, 33 Hunting Lane. I would just like to speak up in support of the article and encourage town members and everybody on this call to show up at town meeting, since you have to be there to vote. And this will require, if I'm not mistaken, a 2/3 majority to pass. I think it's a no-brainer for the town for many reasons, a clear benefit, and we are very appreciative of the generosity of the Holomkas to do this.
Is that it, John? You're done, John?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. George Morrill is the next hand.
Hey, Mary, thanks. I just want to speak from the select board just to confirm that the select board has signed the memorandum of understanding that Dr. Holomka. I just wanted to let everybody know that we did vote to accept that. It's been signed by both parties. So it's ready to go, and the select board does support this article as well.
Thank you, George. And Frank Jenkins?
Yes, the Sherborn Land Acquisition Committee has met on this, discussed it at length, and voted 5-0 to support this article. And we will state so at the meeting on Saturday.
Are there any other comments or questions from anyone who wishes to speak? Oh, yes. So I see Susie is back.
Yes, Susan Tyler again. One quick question. Wasn't there the final value of the appraisal in dispute as to whether that 950,000 that you're talking about, is that the actual final amount? Or is there a possibility, excuse me, of that changing again?
Why don't you let Amanda, town council, speak on this, Mary?
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, through you, Mary, to the previous speaker. This land, as stated in the article and in the advisory committee's report, was assessed, valued, and taxed as recreation land under Chapter 61B. So there's a statutory process that happens that when the property, the town wishes to exercise its option to purchase the property, the town does one appraisal. The statute allows the property owner to, if he is not happy with the appraisal by the town, to contract for his own appraisal, which is in process now, and the expected date of that appraisal is June 14th. If the parties, the town and the property owner, are not happy with the second appraisal, then the statute allows for a third appraisal to be contracted for and paid for by the town and the owner together. And under the statute, that that appraisal is the consideration, the purchase price for the property. So, you know, if the appraiser comes back from the owner, there's discussion back and forth, and payment can't be decided, then there will be the third appraisal.
Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Does that answer your question?
No, what happens if, say, the third appraisal comes in at more than 950,000? This article is only saying that we're going to 950,000. What happens in the case, because town meeting is going to take place before the landowner's appraisal comes in on June 14th. So what happens? We're voting 950,000, and we don't know if that's enough.
That's correct. However, if the town meeting doesn't vote for this, or were not to put this before the voters at this time, then the only option would be for the Board of Selectmen to assign this to a qualified conservation organization under the statute. Here, was a decision made to put this before the voters for their consideration, so that the decision wasn't entirely left in the hands of the Board of Selectmen.
So we'll wait and see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeanette Schlickmeyer, I have your hand up. Or were you just getting ready to talk about your own article and put your hand up early?
No, my question was answered. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Richard Robinson?
Hi, thanks. Now I'm afraid I'm thoroughly confused, and I thought I understood this, what was going on. It sounds as though the best, if you think this is a good idea, the best possible scenario is the one that town meeting will have a chance to vote on, namely that this property will change hands for $950,000. That's one possibility. But it also sounds, since the negotiation at best, litigation probably at worst, is involved in determining the final valuation of this property, that the chances are pretty good that the valuation is going to come in somewhere north. It's certainly not going to come in south of 950. It's going to come in somewhere north of 950. And I'm confused as to where that leaves the town. I think town council may have just said something about what selectmen can and can't do at that point, but I don't understand it. So I would really like some clarification before moving further on this.
Attorney Zaretti, if you could comment.
Sure. Let me take this in the order of the questions. So I described the statutory process of the back and forth of the appraisals. So it's possible that the parties could decide after the second appraisal, even if they don't completely agree, that they will arrive at a consideration at a purchase price. If there's a need for a third appraisal, it's hard to say. It could come in greater than 950. It could come in at 950. I agree that it's unlikely that it would come in at less. The authorization for the town to acquire the property for the purchase price, if you read the article, is for $1 for nominal consideration. The advisory committee has made a recommendation that has been based on the Board of Selectmen's vetting of Unity Farms Sanctuary, Inc. as a possible assignee of the right to purchase at a maximum amount of $950,000. There's no further town meeting vote under this article to expend funds greater than that. So the decision point would be, provided that you vote for this, does the Board of Selectmen come back and ask for an appropriation for more money, or does it not? If this article were voted down under the statute, the Board of Selectmen, as your municipal executive, would still have the right under the statute to find a third-party qualified conservation organization to assign the town's option to purchase to them, right?
Okay.
So this is for the town to actually have the ability to take title, to take a deed to the property, and to authorize, upon receipt of private funds, as much as $950,000. If the town doesn't vote to allow the town to take title to the property, to accept a deed, the Board of Selectmen would still have the ability to reach out to Unity Farm or to another like qualified conservation organization, assign that option to purchase so that they would directly take a deed. So those two concepts are clear, correct? Even if the town does vote to say, yes, we would authorize the Board of Selectmen to take a deed, it's still possible for the Board of Selectmen to assign it to a third party, such as Unity Farm or another qualified conservation organization. So I'm trying not to overstate this, but if there were an affirmative vote to authorize the acquisition, the Board of Selectmen could do one of two things. They could either take title to it on behalf of the town, taking a deed to the town of Sherborn for general municipal purposes, or they could say, we're going to hold a hearing and we're going to assign it to a third party.
Thanks.
So I see Paul Bocchicchio.
Yeah, hi, Mary. Paul Bocchicchio, 41 Hunting Lane. I just wanted to respond to Richard and Susie's question or point that the price cannot be lower than $950,000. Amanda could correct me on this if she wants to. But the first appraisal was $950,000 with the quote extraordinary assumption, end quote, that there would be 2 lots that would be building lots other than where the main house is. I don't know if that's going to be sorted out in the appraisal process with the second appraiser or the third appraiser. But arguably, if there are not 2 building lots on this property, the price can be lower than $950,000. So that's a possibility. I'm not sure, how that's going to work out, but I just wanted to mention that it could be higher than 950, but I think it could be lower.
Thank you, Paul. Daryl? Daryl, your hand is up.
Okay, sorry about that. I was just going to mention that I don't know if the Board of Health has seen a map of what the parcel to potentially be purchased looks like, but given that we work with, obviously, septic and well all the time, we could try to see how any records that we have for the property might match up with that portion of the property to help assess just how many potential building lots are there. Of course, it's not a guarantee because we haven't tested the site entirely ourselves, but I'm just making that offer that we could weigh in to whomever that might be relevant to on this call.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. Are there any other comments on Article 15? I do not see any. Jeannie, do you see anybody?
No.
Okay, so moving on to Article 16. Upper Charles Rail Trail Access Acceptance of Easements. This is a majority article. The motion is short, so I will read it. I move favorable action and that the town vote to accept easements to allow the construction of a small parking area off Whitney Street and a trail to provide access to the Sherborn segment of the Upper Charles Trail as more particularly described in the warrant. Are there any questions or comments?
I believe this is a planning board article and Gino Carlucci is going to describe it if you'll give him 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I won't take 5 minutes by any means, but just very quickly, when Whitney Farms was approved by the ZBA, there was a requirement that they provide an easement through their property for a very small parking area and a trail connection to the Upper Charles Trail. Over the years, as it was looked at more closely, it was decided that the connection would be better if it were extended a bit down to where the gas line crosses the Upper Charles Trail. And the developers, the owners are more than willing to cooperate and have already agreed that that's fine. And so this is any real estate transaction requires town meeting approval. So this is simply to approve that acceptance of the easement from the developer. If you'd like, I can show you a kind of a rough sketch of how the connection would be laid out. Otherwise, we can just I'll just respond to any if there's any questions.
Is the sketch easy there to?
It's one
Sure. So put it up so people can see it.
If I can find it quickly. Here it is. So Whitney Street crosses the trail easement. This is an emergency access to Whitney Farm. The main entrance, of course, is back there. So there would be just a couple of parking spaces on each side of that emergency access. There'd be a gate by the actual road that enters the development. And then the pathway would just go parallel to Whitney Street and then parallel to the rail trail itself to the gas line easement. And the main reason for or one of the reasons anyway, I'd say the main reason for extending it to this position is so that it's more level and handicapped accessible. So it also avoids some wet areas up in this portion of it. And then it's just a short gap remaining between here and the developed part of the Upper Charles Trail in Holliston. And we are currently awaiting a decision on a grant we've applied for to complete this last little section. If we don't get the grant, it's a small section that we will get that done as well.
Thank you, Gino.
That's all. I'll stop my sharing.
Okay, thank you, Gino. Are there any questions on Article 16 on the Upper Charles?
Carol McGarry has her hand up.
Okay, Carol.
Hi, Gino. Is the proposed trail along? Is it within 100 feet of the wetlands? I thought that there was a wetland area around there, and you just mentioned it.
Yes, there is. And when the developer proposed adding solar panels to the site, and he had a trail in that vicinity, the Conservation Commission decision was to move that trail over to this easement where it's proposed currently.
So is this it's been reviewed by Conservation Commission, the location of the entire trail?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. I want to make sure if it was the same one that we've seen. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this? Okay. All right, moving on to Article 17, amend the general bylaws, public ways, truck brake usage. And this is Steve, your name, Constantine, right? I knew that coming in, but I totally blew it. So.
All right, thanks, Mary. Can I share my screen?
Sure.
All right. All right. Can folks see that?
Yes.
All right, thanks. Okay, so thanks, Mary. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Constantine. I live at 32 North Main Street. So I'm going to talk about Article 17, truck engine Jake brake problem. So the problem is that Sherborn roads have experienced an increase in the number of large diesel trucks passing through town. This is only getting worse as we see increased traffic levels on all roads and as we come out of COVID. It's a noise problem. So to supplement their standard braking systems, some large trucks use an engine brake, also called a Jacobs brake, Jake brake, or a compression brake. Jake brakes are used to reduce the wear on a truck's regular braking system. They are strictly an optional accessory, and they can be turned on or off by one switch, which is located on the truck's dashboard. So why are Jake brakes a problem? Jake brakes, engine brakes, produce an excessive, abrupt, high decibel sound, noise pollution that invades our homes and yards and public ways. It can startle pedestrians, cyclists, horseback riders, and other drivers. They can also be dangerous under wet, icy conditions, which can lead to a jackknife situation. Discharge of unspent diesel fuel if they're not maintained properly, and potential to have environmental repercussions. Problem areas in Sherborn: traffic lights, stop signs, hilly areas specifically. I'm not going to read all these off, but downtown, where North Main and Elliott, where the lights are, near the Pine Hill School and the Heritage, Western Ave, the Odessa trucks, Everett Street, Coolidge and Speen. Many of these problem areas have been discussed on Sherborn Next Door. So what can we do? We can vote to approve Sherborn warrant article number 17. And this is how it reads. And again, I'm not going to read it. Folks can read it in the warrant. But basically, it's a prohibition of the of jake breaks in the streets of Sherborn. Also, there's been some other discussion about that. So right now, the proposed article carries a fine of $300. Sherborn Police Chief David Bento has proposed that this be changed to the following schedule: 100 for the first, 200 for the second, 300 for the third. Partial list of towns that have regulations in place: Hingham, Ayr, Boxford, Norwell, Holyoke. Our neighbor to the south, Medfield, does not have the bylaw, but they have signage prohibiting the use of engine brakes in certain areas. So Medfield's Deputy Police Chief, Lars Anderson, stated that signage is effective, but the correct way to implement this is to back up signage with the town bylaw. This was also echoed by our own Sherborn Select Board member, Paul DeRensis, at the March 4th Select Board meeting when we reviewed warrant articles. Downside, it's tough to enforce, but having signage in place will notify truckers of the bylaw and minimize infractions, keeping sound levels down and the town safer. So a yes vote will help to make Sherborn a safer, more quiet, peaceful, and desirable town to live in. And I'm hoping folks will vote for this. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Steve. You want to unshare? Yep, great. Looks good. Are there any, I see Matt, oh, quite a few people here. Okay, so Matt Beavers.
Sure, thank you. I just want to make a brief comment in strong support of this. I live at 10 Coolidge Street, right at the corner of Coolidge and North Main. When we moved to Sherborn 3 years ago, our realtor warned us we were on a very busy street and we were moving from downtown Boston, so we laughed at her. But I got to be honest that recently the jake brake has really increased in this neighborhood and the noise is dramatic. I do know that this should fall under existing noise ordinances, but as acknowledged, it's difficult to enforce. And I do think that this relatively straightforward amendment and backing signage will make a very positive impact on at least my family's life and I think many others that live in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Robert Johnson?
If the advisory committee's motion is defeated and an affirmative motion is made, would that affirmative motion include the graduated $100, $200, $300 violation?
I think that would depend on who made the motion, Robert, what the motion would say, the amendment. No, I'm sorry, it wouldn't be an amendment, it would be an alternative motion.
Would anyone care to comment on that?
I'm not sure what I could say, but I know Chief Bento was the one that brought it up during the discussion we had. I'm not sure if
But I can comment on it if you'd like me to.
Please do.
Okay. I'm not the one that was recommending this, and I made a suggestion about the fine amount because I thought the first offense 300 was a little high at one of the previous meetings. So I was not aware where we were standing right now. As I had spoken in the past, there are different ways to approach this. I was sort of taking the middle road on this. I can work either way, but I do feel if it does go through the 100 to start with, then the 200 and then the 300 is probably the best option. As far as making that change at this point, I'm not exactly sure procedurally how that gets done. I'll leave that to the lawyers and whatever you decide.
Someone could make an amendment.
Okay.
From the floor before the article is voted. But then if the article is voted and the advisory negative motion is voted down, then we would need an alternative motion, not an amendment. And that would be up to someone to make or not make as they saw fit.
it sounded like Stephen was on board with that. So, I'll leave it up to you if you wanted to make that motion and make that change at town meeting.
I'm fine with that. So Mary, just procedurally, I would also, once presenting it, make a motion to amend the $300 fine to 100, 200, 300.
You could offer to make a friendly amendment.
Okay.
On the floor.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments on that? Okay, so that's Article 17. Article 18. Citizen petition for adding a new general bylaw for products. And we have a speaker to that, Jeanette Schlickenmeyer.
Yes, hello. I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, please do.
Thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. What you'll hear from me in the next 5 minutes is first about the proposed bylaw, second about the animals that are affected by the fur industry, third about the environmental impact of the fur industry, fourth about the danger to public health from the fur industry, and fifth the alternatives to fur. The proposed fur products bylaw would make it unlawful to sell, offer for sale, display for sale, trade, or distribute for monetary or non-monetary value fur products in the town of Sherborn. Fur products include articles of clothing and accessories, and home accessories and decor that are made in whole or part of fur. The bylaw provides reasonable exemptions for leather, cowhide, shearling, fur used in tribal or cultural purposes, and used fur. The proposed bylaw does not prohibit the possession of fur products nor the purchase of fur products outside of Sherborn. You may know in the past, Sherborn voters have consistently voted in favor of animal welfare legislation. In 1996, 68% voted in favor of banning leg-hold traps. In 2008, 68% voted in favor of banning greyhound racing. And in 2016, 78% voted in favor of ending the cruel confinement of farm animals. You may wonder why Sherborn needs this bylaw when there are no local businesses selling fur. This bylaw represents the core values of the residents of Sherborn. It tells would-be retailers that selling fur does not reflect the values of town residents and is not welcome here. And I'd like to point out the picture of the coat with the coyote trim is from the Saks Fifth Avenue website I got last month. And a week after that, they announced that they will be the next major retailer no longer selling fur. They'll be closing their Boston Fur Salon at the end of the fiscal year. The fur industry exploits several species of fur-bearing animals. The latest figures estimate 100 million animals. 100 million animals are killed annually just for their fur. And that does not even count rabbits, which includes several hundred million more. Fur farm animals live in tiny, filthy cages where they literally lose their minds from confinement before they are killed by the harshest of means: anal electrocution, suffocation, clubbing, often being incapacitated but still alive and conscious when they are skinned. This has been repeatedly documented on fur farms in China, which is the source of 80% of the fur sold in the United States. And there are videos of these investigations on furfreema.com. And I would urge you to look for yourselves at what goes on in this industry. Trapping contributes only a small percentage of fur, but still over 5 million animals are caught in traps annually. These archaic and indiscriminate traps often maim or kill non-target animals, including threatened species and pets. These animals often die slowly by drowning, predation, shock, injury, or blood loss. And if they are found alive, they are frequently clubbed or suffocated in order to preserve the pelt's value. Now, Massachusetts has outlawed the use of snares along with body gripping, leg hold, and conibear traps. But unfortunately, their use is still common elsewhere in the United States. The fur industry hurts the environment. Fur farms require vast amounts of feed and water and produce massive amounts of manure, and this contaminates soil and waterways. And the fur production requires the use of toxic chemicals like chromium and formaldehyde, which are also potential pollutants. And I know Sherborn alone cannot solve the world's environmental problems, but this bylaw will be a step in the right direction. The fur production spreads COVID-19 and possibly other infectious diseases. You may have heard last summer that COVID-19 spread throughout hundreds of factory fur farms across Europe, as well as fur farms in Utah, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Oregon. Research shows that farmed mink spread mutated viruses to humans, and the mutations might reduce the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines. These health risks led European governments to kill nearly 20 million minks in order to prevent the public health. France and the Netherlands banned fur farming, and Israel has banned the fur trade. The good news is that there is currently cruelty-free alternatives. Today, faux fur is considered virtually indistinguishable from animal fur and is preferred by many fashion designers. Over 300 fashion brands and retailers across the globe are now fur-free. Support for the fur ban would align Sherborn with over 80% of the state's population on an issue of animal cruelty and environmental damage of a staggering scale. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Jeanette. If you want to unshare your screen.
Yes.
That'd be great. Thanks very much. Are there any comments, questions on this article? I see none.
Marion.
Yes, I do, Marion.
All right. I don't think any of us want to see more animals killed for fur. So the moral question that's kind of behind this, I have absolutely no argument with. My only thought is that this is a rather long and wordy bylaw. And we first heard about it, I believe, at the advisory select board meeting. That may not have been the first meeting I heard about it, but it was very recently. And I'm just suggesting to the proponent that rather than include all these pages, rather than include all these pages of wording, that you might consult the planning board, for example, to see whether such a prohibition on sale of fur products could be built into section, I think it's 3.2 of the town bylaws, that would make a much more efficient way of making it a law in Sherborn without expanding by pages the general bylaws. It's just a suggestion. It would fill the requirement that you're looking for in a much more efficient way. Just something to be considered. Thanks.
Thank you, Marion. Richard? You unmute yourself, Richard.
Richard Robinson, 117 Mill Street. In section 4, your exceptions, I have two questions. In part A, you say that it doesn't apply to a used fur product by a private party, excluding a retail transaction. Does that mean that it would still be under this bylaw illegal for me to sell a fur coat, say, to a friend of mine in town? That's the first question. And then the second question is that part D of the exceptions says that it excludes a fur product where the activity is expressly authorized by federal or state law. I'm a little unclear as what that means, since, as I understand it, federal law at least allows the sale of fur products. I'm not sure what expressly authorized would do to that, but if they're allowed by federal law, what does this exception mean? Thanks.
Jeanette, do you want to respond?
Absolutely. So section 4, part A, yes, if you have a used fur coat, you can sell it to your neighbor or to whomever, as a private party. If, you had your grandmother's fur coat hanging in the closet or something, you certainly could sell that. And then part D is just that the purpose of that is to help get this through the Attorney General's office without, it's so that it does, if it's something is expressly authorized by either the state, it's a state law, it's just to make sure that we have no conflicts with the federal or state laws. We don't want to conflict with any already established laws.
Are you asking?
Section D would be.
Sorry, are you asking another question, a follow-up, Richard? Or is your hand just left up?
I don't know, did that help? Did that help, Richard?
Well, it helps, although I suppose there is a fine distinction between allowed and authorized, but federal law allows the sales of fur. It may not authorize it in some specific case for some specific purpose, but it seems odd that so much rests on that rather fine distinction. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments from anyone on that? Okay, and we are now to the last article, Article 19, citizen petition for adding new general bylaw, Chapter 32, pet shop sales. And as I understand it, the sponsor of this article is withdrawing it at this time. And so advisory has recommended that no action be taken. Are there any comments, questions about that article? No? Okay, then. So we are done. We have been through the warrant. I hope that everyone feels that they were heard and that they got maybe some comments made or questions answered that they had. And I look forward to seeing all of you on Saturday morning at 10 a.m., bright and early. I would advise you to get there early because we are expecting a good-sized crowd. Jackie, are you still on? Jackie?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. What time are we opening?
I'm having people come at 9 to start to, just make sure that we're set up. I'm assuming that we can start checking people in around 9:20 or so.
Okay.
9:15, 9:20.
Okay.
I would just encourage everyone to please, if you have not already, please do RSVP that you are coming. It's going to be, it's a difficult setup with the pandemic, and we really need to know how many people are going to be arriving. I know that's not an exact number, but it really helps.
And I'll just toss in there that if you are coming, it's very helpful for us to know whether you're coming with other members of your household or if you're coming singly, because if you're coming with other members of your household, we can set up groups of chairs as opposed to just single chairs separated. Robert, you have a question?
How do we notify that we're coming?
So there is a survey on the town website and on Nextdoor, and they both go to the same place. And, I can, after this is over, I can send you the link if you want.
Yeah, it's on the front page of the website. If anyone has any issues where they can't find the link, you can always email me and tell me how many people are coming, and I can add the numbers into the RSVP myself.
Sean, you have something to say?
If you're coming with or without other members of your family and you can, don't park in the lot here. So the people that need to park in the lot at the DPW can. If you can, just park at Pine Hill Lane and walk down. It's not that far of a walk. But we're going to run out of spaces if everyone comes here, especially if there's multiple people from the same household.
Yeah, and we will have I've arranged for 4 police officers. So we'll have 4 police officers helping direct traffic, and a couple of them down at DPW and a couple of them up at Pine Hill if they're needed.
And I saw Jeanette's hand up before.
Well, it was just a quick question was that the survey where it just said, are you planning on coming and how many people in your household?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. So I think we are done, and I look forward to seeing everybody bright and early on Saturday morning. Thank you very much.